I'm Anthony, 42 male. I'm an architect, a man who spends his days turning abstract concepts of space and light into solid, tangible structures. My life is built on precision, on plans, on the quiet satisfaction of seeing a foundation laid correctly. For the past 5 years, that sense of duty extended to managing the care and finances of my ailing mother, a responsibility I considered a sacred trust. But I never imagined that the brother I grew up with would try to bulldoze the very foundation of my life by accusing me of the unthinkable. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. My mother, Catherine, is a woman of formidable intellect. At 80 years old, her body had begun to betray her, a slow, frustrating decline brought on by severe arthritis and a heart that had grown weary. But her mind, that remained a fortress. A retired history professor, she could still debate the fall of the Roman Empire with a clarity that would leave graduate students scrambling for their notes. She saw the world not as it was, but as a series of causes and effects, of precedents and consequences. It was this foresight, this ability to see the chess moves far ahead, that led to the quiet arrangement 5 years ago. I remember the day clearly. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, and the golden light slanted through the windows of her study, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The room smelled of old books and lemon tea. She had summoned me and our family lawyer, Mr. Alistair Finch, a man whose calm demeanor and sharp suits had been a fixture in our lives for as long as I could remember. My older brother, Julian, was conspicuously absent. "Anthony," she began, her voice a little thinner than it used to be but still laced with steel, "we need to discuss the future. My future." I sat opposite her, Mr. Finch beside me with his leather briefcase resting on his lap. I nodded, assuming this was about updating her will or perhaps discussing moving her into an assisted living facility, a topic she usually shut down with academic ferocity. "I am not a crumbling ruin just yet," she continued, a faint smile playing on her lips. "But I am a realist. There will come a time perhaps soon when I cannot manage my own affairs, when I cannot sign checks or debate with insurance companies or ensure the property taxes are paid. When that day comes, I need someone to be my hands and my voice, someone I trust implicitly." My gaze flickered to the empty chair beside me, Julian's chair. At 45, my brother was a sales director for a large tech firm. He was charismatic, ambitious, and lived his life in the fast lane. He drove a flashy car, wore expensive watches, and always seemed to be chasing the next big commission. He saw success in terms of numbers on a spreadsheet, and he had a history of making impulsive, high-risk financial decisions. He'd lost a significant amount of money in a speculative real estate venture a decade ago, a loss my mother had quietly helped him absorb. She loved him, of course, but she did not mistake her love for blind trust. "You're wondering why Julian isn't here," she said, reading my mind as she always could. "I love your brother dearly, Anthony, but his talents lie in persuasion, not prudence. He sees a finish line and he will sprint toward it without checking if the ground beneath his feet is solid. You, on the other hand, you check the foundation. You measure twice and cut once. That is what I need." Mr. Finch cleared his throat softly. "Catherine has decided to grant you, Anthony, her durable power of attorney. This is a significant responsibility. It would give you the legal authority to manage her finances, make healthcare decisions, and act on her behalf in nearly all matters, effective immediately, though she wishes for you to act only when she is no longer able." I was taken aback. It wasn't a role I had ever sought, but I understood her logic. I was the steady one, the one who built things to last. Julian was the one who gambled. "I'm honored, Mom," I said quietly. "I'll do whatever you need." "I know you will," she said. "But in this family, things have a way of becoming complicated. Julian has a strong personality. He may not understand this decision. He may even contest it when the time comes, arguing that I was not of sound mind." This was the moment the meeting shifted. Mr. Finch opened his briefcase and produced not just the legal documents, but a small, discreet video camera which he placed on the corner of the desk. "Therefore," Mr. Finch stated, "we will be taking an additional step. Catherine will state her wishes on camera, we will record the signing, she will explain her choice, her reasoning, and affirm her mental state. It will be dated, witnessed, and notarized. It will serve as an undeniable record of her intents." My stomach tightened. The fact that my mother and her lawyer felt this was necessary spoke volumes about their concerns regarding Julian. It was a preemptive strike against a battle they hoped would never come but fully expected might. The recording began. My mother, looking directly into the lens, was magnificent. She stated her name, the date, and her address. With the calm authority of a tenured professor delivering a lecture, she explained what a durable power of attorney was and why she was granting it. I have appointed my younger son, Anthony, to this role, she declared, her voice firm. He has demonstrated prudence, integrity, and a deep respect for my well-being throughout his life. His judgment is sound and his character is unimpeachable. She then took a deep breath. I have deliberately not chosen my elder son, Julian. I love him, but his financial history is one of impulsivity and risk. He has on several occasions pressured me for loans for ventures I deemed unwise. I fear that his ambition, while a powerful engine for his career, could lead him to make decisions with my assets that are not in my best interest. This decision is not a reflection of my love, but an honest assessment of my son's strengths and weaknesses. I am of sound mind and body, and this is my clear, uncoerced, and final decision. She then signed the documents. I signed my acceptance. Mr. Finch and his paralegal signed as witnesses. The camera captured every stroke of the pen. When it was over, a sense of profound finality settled in the room. Mr. Finch packed away the documents and the recording, which he explained would be stored in his firm's secure vault. This POA is legally active now, Anthony, Mr. Finch reminded me. But you are to honor your mother's wish and act as her agent only when she directs you to, or when it becomes necessary. We agreed that the arrangement would remain quiet. There was no need to create unnecessary drama with Julian. For 5 years, it was a silent pact between my mother, her lawyer, and me. I began subtly helping her, paying her bills online from her account under her supervision, organizing her tax documents, and ensuring her caregivers were paid on time. It was a seamless transition, a quiet assumption of duties that she could no longer comfortably manage. Julian, living 2 states away, remained blissfully unaware. He saw me as the dutiful son handling the mundane tasks, never suspecting that my authority was not just moral, but legally absolute, and fortified by a secret she had left behind just in case the foundation ever needed to be defended. Life settled into a predictable rhythm. My days were a mix of architectural drafts and client meetings, my evenings a blend of quiet dinners at home and long phone calls with my mother. I managed her affairs with the same meticulous care I applied to designing a load-bearing wall. Every transaction was documented, every receipt filed away. I set up a separate checking account into which only her pension and social security were deposited, and from which all her household bills and caregiver salaries were paid. Her larger investment portfolio remained untouched, managed by a conservative firm Mr. Finch had recommended years ago. It was a transparent, boring, and utterly responsible system. I felt a quiet pride in fulfilling my promise to her, ensuring her final years were free from financial stress. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my office, a minimalist space with clean lines and a large window overlooking the city. I was reviewing the blueprints for a new library, tracing the flow of natural light through the planned atrium, when my desk phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Is this Anthony Miller?" a woman's voice asked. It was flat, professional, and devoid of any warmth. "Speaking," I answered, my eyes still on the blueprints. "My name is Sandra Coombs. I'm a case manager with Adult Protective Services." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Adult Protective Services, my mind raced, my first thought a jolt of pure terror for my mother. "Is my mother okay? Has there been an accident?" "Sir, this call is about your mother, Catherine Miller, but it is not regarding an accident," Ms. Coombs said, her tone unchanged. "We have received a report of potential financial elder abuse concerning Mrs. Miller. Your name was mentioned as the person of interest." The blueprints on my desk blurred into a meaningless swirl of lines. I felt the air leave my lungs as if I'd been punched. Financial abuse? Me? The words were so alien, so antithetical to everything I had done that I couldn't process them. It felt like being accused of defying gravity. I don't understand," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "That's impossible. I'm her son. I have her power of attorney. I handle her finances to help her." "We are aware that you manage her finances, sir," Ms. Coombs said. The word "sir" fell. "T like an accusation. The report we received alleges that you are exerting undue influence over your mother, isolating her, and misappropriating her funds for your personal use." Each word was a hammer blow. Undue influence, isolating her, misappropriating funds. It was a script from a nightmare. I could feel a hot, prickly sensation behind my eyes. The professional calm I prided myself on shattered into a million pieces. "That's a lie," I said, my voice cracking. "It's an absolute lie. Who would say that? Every penny is accounted for. I have records, bank statements, everything. My mother and I are very close. I would never." I trailed off, my throat constricting with a sob I couldn't contain. I was a 42-year-old man, a respected professional, sitting in my meticulously organized office, and I was crying into the phone to a complete stranger who had just accused me of being a monster. The humiliation was a physical sensation, a burning wave that washed over my entire body. "Sir, I understand this is difficult to hear," Ms. Coombs said, a sliver of what might have been formulaic sympathy entering her voice. "But we have a legal obligation to investigate any credible report." The report was quite detailed. "Detailed what details?" I asked, my mind reeling. "What am I being accused of specifically?" "I can't go into the specifics of the report over the phone," she replied. "What I need to do is schedule an in-person interview with you and a separate one with your mother. We'll also need to conduct a full financial audit. Can you be available to meet with me this Friday?" An audit, an interview. They were going to descend on my mother, an 80-year-old woman with a fragile heart, and question her. They were going to put her through a stressful, terrifying investigation because of some malicious, anonymous lie. The thought of the stress this would cause her was even more devastating than the accusation against me. "Please," I begged, the tears now streaming down my face. "You can't upset her with this. Her health is so fragile. It could be dangerous for her. Whatever you need, get it from me. I'll give you every bank statement, every receipt. I have nothing to hide, but please be gentle with her." "We are trained to handle these situations with sensitivity, Mr. Miller," she said, her professional mask firmly back in place. "But we must speak with her. Alone. Is Friday at 10 a.m. at your office acceptable for our initial meeting?" I felt trapped. Arguing would only make me look more guilty. "Yes," I choked out, "that's fine. We will also be contacting your mother to schedule a visit. Thank you for your cooperation." The line went dead. I sat there holding the receiver, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. The silence in my office was deafening. The elegant blueprints for the library, a building meant to be a sanctuary of knowledge and peace, now seemed to mock me. My entire world, a structure I had so carefully built on a foundation of integrity and love, had just been condemned. I leaned forward, put my head in my hands, and sobbed. I cried from the shock, from the fear, and from the gut-wrenching pain of being accused of betraying the one person I had sworn to protect. It was the most profound and shattering moment of my life, and I had no idea who had lit the fuse. The hours after the phone call were a blur of cold dread. I canceled my afternoon meetings, telling my assistant I had a sudden family emergency, a phrase that now felt like a bitter irony. I drove home in a daze, the city streets a smear of color and light that my brain couldn't quite assemble into a coherent picture. My mind was a frantic cacophony, replaying Ms. Coombs's sterile, accusatory words over and over: undue influence, misappropriating funds, isolating her. Who could hate me enough to concoct such a venomous, targeted lie? The report was detailed, she had said. That meant it wasn't a random crank call. This was personal. This was someone who knew my mother, who knew I was managing her affairs. The circle of people with that knowledge was vanishingly small: my mother's caregivers, her doctor, Mr. Finch, and Julian. The name surfaced in my mind like a dark shape rising from the depths. At first, I pushed it away. It was too monstrous to contemplate. My own brother, the man who shared my childhood, my history, my blood, it felt impossible. Julian was ambitious, sometimes selfish, and often careless with other people's feelings, but this was a different level of malice. This was an attempt to destroy my reputation, my relationship with my mother, and potentially my freedom. I paced my apartment, the clean, modern lines of my own design feeling like a cage. I tried to think of anyone else, a disgruntled caregiver, unlikely. I had an excellent relationship with them and paid them well above the standard rate to ensure my mother received the best care. Her doctor, absurd. He was an old family friend. It was a dead end. Every logical path led back to the one conclusion I didn't want to reach. Then the memories started to surface, small, seemingly insignificant moments from the past few months that now clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Julian's phone calls had become more frequent. I had initially thought he was finally taking more of an interest in our mother's well-being. Now I saw them for what they were: reconnaissance missions. "How's Mom really doing?" he'd asked a few weeks ago, his voice slick with manufactured concern. "Is she still sharp? Does she get confused sometimes?" At the time, I'd answered honestly. "Her memory is incredible. She's physically weak, but her mind is all there." I remembered Julian sounding almost disappointed. Then came the questions about money, always cloaked in the language of brotherly help. "It must be a lot for you to handle, man, all those accounts. Are you sure you're keeping everything straight? If you ever need me to look things over, give a second opinion, just say the word. That's what I do for a living, after all." I had brushed it off. "It's all good, Julian. I have a simple system. It's not complicated." His most recent visit about a month ago was the final piece of the puzzle. He had flown in for a weekend. He was charming with our mother, bringing her expensive flowers and telling her stories that made her laugh. But when he was alone with me, his demeanor shifted. He had walked through her house, his eyes scanning her belongings, the antique furniture, the paintings she had collected over a lifetime. "Mom has a lot of valuable stuff here," he'd commented, picking up a small porcelain figurine. "This alone is probably worth a few grand. It's important to make sure her estate is properly managed." Later that evening, after a couple of glasses of wine, he had pressed me. "Seriously, Anthony, what's the plan? Does Mom have a power of attorney set up? It should really be me, you know. I'm the expert in finance. It's what I do. It would be irresponsible not to have the best person for the job." "Mom has it all taken care of, Julian," I had said firmly, ending the conversation. "You don't need to worry about it." I saw the flicker of annoyance in his eyes before he masked it with a smile. He thought I was the one with POA. He didn't know about the durable POA, the one that was already active. He must have assumed it was a standard one, and he was laying the groundwork to have it transferred to him by painting me as either incompetent or criminal. He wasn't just offering to help, he was trying to stage a coup. The architect of the lie wasn't a stranger, it was my own brother. He had built this fabrication brick by brick, using my dedication as the mortar for his deceit. His motive was as old as time: greed. He saw our mother not as a person to be cared for, but as an asset to be controlled. He wanted her money, and I was in his way. The detailed report to APS was his wrecking ball, designed to demolish my credibility and clear a path for him to take over. The realization didn't come with a flash of anger, but with a deep, glacial coldness. The grief and shock I'd felt earlier began to harden into something else. Resolve. Julian had mistaken my quiet sense of duty for weakness. He thought his aggressive sales tactics could work on his own family. He thought he could lie and manipulate his way into our mother's fortune. He had started a war, assuming I was unarmed. He had no idea about the secret weapon our mother had given me 5 years ago. He didn't know that while he was busy sketching out his attack, I was holding the master blueprints to the entire fortress. My grief was now gone, replaced by a cold, clear focus. He had framed an architect. Now I would show him what it felt like when the architect designed his downfall. The initial storm of emotion had passed, leaving behind a landscape of cold, hard clarity. Panic and tears were luxuries I could no longer afford. Julian had made a calculated move, and I needed to respond with overwhelming, irrefutable force. My first and only call was to the one person who understood the entire picture, Mr. Alastair Finch. I reached him on his personal cell phone that evening. I explained the situation in a low, steady voice, detailing the call from APS and the accusations leveled against me. I told him my suspicions about Julian. Mr. Finch listened patiently, his silence a comforting presence on the other end of the line. When I finished, there was no surprise in his voice, only a weary resignation. "I am sorry to hear this, Anthony," he said, his voice calm and measured. "But I am not entirely surprised. Your mother was a shrewd woman. She anticipated that Julian's greed might one day eclipse his love. That is precisely why we took the precautions we did." His words were like a balm to my frayed nerves. He wasn't just a lawyer, he was an ally, a keeper of the truth. We agreed to me. Ed at his office first thing in the morning. He told me not to speak to anyone else, especially not Julian, and to bring a copy of the meticulously kept financial records for my mother's accounts. The next morning, I walked into the august wood-paneled offices of Finch, Covington, and Dunn. The air smelled of leather and legal precedent. Mr. Finch greeted me himself, ushering me into a large, quiet conference room. I laid my file on the gleaming mahogany table, a thick binder containing 5 years of bank statements, categorized receipts, and a summary spreadsheet tracking every dollar in and out. "This is exemplary, Anthony," Mr. Finch said after leafing through the pages for a few minutes. "Your record-keeping is impeccable. An auditor would find nothing here but a son dutifully caring for his mother. This alone will likely be enough to dismantle their case, but it won't stop the investigation from being a stressful ordeal for Catherine." "That's what I'm most worried about," I admitted. "I can handle the accusations, but I can't bear the thought of them putting her through an interrogation." "I agree," he said, closing the binder. "We need to end this before it truly begins. We won't just defend, we will counter. It is time to retrieve the insurance policy your mother left for you." He made a brief call to his assistant, and a few minutes later she entered with a locked, fireproof case. Mr. Finch keyed in a code, and with a soft click it opened. Inside, nestled in protective foam, was a small, encrypted hard drive. "5 years ago," Mr. Finch said as he plugged the drive into a laptop connected to a large monitor on the wall, "we made a video. I believe it's time you saw it again." He navigated to the file and clicked play. And there she was, my mother Catherine 5 years younger. Her body was stronger then, but the same intelligent, discerning light shone in her eyes. The video quality was excellent, the audio crystal clear. She looked directly at the camera, at us, at the future she had so astutely predicted. Her voice filled the silent room, calm and resolute. My name is Catherine Miller. I am of sound mind and body. She went through the legal declarations with the precision of a scholar. Then she came to the heart of the matter. I have appointed my younger son, Anthony, to this role, she said, her gaze unwavering. He is a man of integrity and caution. He builds things, he doesn't break them. She paused, and her expression softened with a hint of sadness. I have deliberately not chosen my elder son, Julian. I love my son, but love cannot be blind to character. Julian's life has been marked by a pattern of financial recklessness. He has a gambler's spirit, always certain the next big risk will pay off, even when it costs him dearly. A few years ago, I had to bail him out of a significant debt incurred from a failed business venture he had assured me was a sure thing. He has, on several occasions since, approached me for large sums of money for other speculative schemes. He does not see a safety net, he sees a bank. Watching it again, hearing her words now in the context of Julian's betrayal, was profoundly moving. It was as if she were reaching through time to defend me. I fear, she continued, her voice dropping slightly, that if Julian were in control of my finances, he would see my life savings as capital for his ambitions. My well-being would become secondary to his opportunities. This decision is not made out of a lack of love. It is made out of a need for security and peace in my final years. I trust Anthony to provide that. I do not trust Julian. This is my clear, uncoerced, and final decision. The video ended, the screen went black. For a moment, the only sound was my own breathing. A wave of immense gratitude and sorrow washed over me. Gratitude for my mother's incredible foresight and sorrow that she had known her own son so well that she had to build this final line of defense against him. This wasn't just a legal document, it was her final lesson, a testament to her clear-eyed view of the world and the people in it. This, Mr. Finch said, his voice gentle but firm, changes everything. This is not just a defense against the APS claim. This is evidence of Julian's motive and a clear refutation of any claim he could make about your undue influence. He has not only lied to a state agency, but he has acted in direct opposition to his mother's explicitly stated wishes. So what do we do? I asked, feeling a surge of strength. Do we send this to Ms. Coombs? No, Mr. Finch said, a strategic glint in his eye. Sending it to her now would initiate a protracted process. She would have to investigate Julian, who would then lie and obfuscate. It would become a messy affair. There is a more direct, more effective solution. Julian thinks he is playing chess with a novice. We will show him he has stumbled into a checkmate that was set for him 5 years ago. W. E will arrange a meeting. You, me, and your brother. It's time for a family accounting. The strategy Mr. Finch proposed was one of surgical precision. Instead of getting into a protracted battle with a bureaucratic agency, we would cut the head off the snake. Our target was not Ms. Coombs or Adult Protective Services, it was Julian. The goal was to confront him in a controlled environment, present him with the undeniable truth, and force him to dismantle the entire fabrication himself. It was clean, efficient, and would spare my mother from any direct involvement. The first step was setting the trap. I needed to call Julian and arrange the meeting. Mr. Finch coached me on the approach: be neutral, sound weary, and let Julian believe his plan was working. Let him think I was cornered and seeking a negotiation. Pride, as my mother used to say, is a powerful anesthetic. It dulls the senses to impending disaster. I took a deep breath and dialed his number. He picked up on the second ring, his voice oozing a false, syrupy concern. Anthony, I was just about to call you. I heard some disturbing news. Is everything okay? He asked, the feigned innocence so thick it was almost comical. Not really, Julian, I said, letting a note of exhaustion creep into my voice. Things are complicated. There's been a misunderstanding regarding Mom's finances, some kind of official inquiry. No, he exclaimed, a masterful performance of shock. That's terrible. Who would do that? You've been working so hard. See, this is what I was worried about. It's too much for one person. Listen, I cut in. I think we need to talk. In person. We need to get on the same page about Mom's care and how things are being handled. I've spoken to Mr. Finch, and he suggested we all sit down together to clear the air and make sure everything is handled properly going forward. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. This was exactly what he wanted. He would see this as my surrender. He would assume I was coming to the table to hand over the reins, under the watchful eye of a lawyer who would legitimize the transfer. His arrogance would be his downfall. Of course, little brother, he said, his tone shifting to one of magnanimity. That's a very wise idea. I can clear my schedule, when and where. Mr. Finch has offered his office's main conference room for privacy. Is Friday morning good for you? We could meet before my scheduled appointment. I let that last part hang in the air, a piece of bait he couldn't resist. Friday morning is perfect, he said, practically purring. Don't you worry, Anthony, we'll sort this all out. Family has to stick together. Right, I said, feeling a chill at his hypocrisy. See you then. I hung up the phone, my hand trembling slightly, not from fear but from adrenaline. The trap was set. The next 2 days were a strange limbo. I went to work, moving through the motions of my job, but my mind was elsewhere, rehearsing the coming confrontation. Mr. Finch and I had a final prep meeting. He had the conference room equipped with a large, high-definition screen connected to his laptop. The video file was ready. My financial binder was prepared. Every piece was in place. The meeting was set for Friday at 9 a.m., 1 hour before my scheduled interview with Ms. Coombs from APS. The timing was deliberate. We wanted to resolve this with enough time to cancel that appointment, to wipe this whole nightmare off the slate in one decisive move. The name for the meeting, A Table for Four, had come to me as I planned. It would be me, Julian, and Mr. Finch physically present at the table. But the fourth seat, the most important one, belonged to our mother. She wouldn't be there in person, but her voice, her wisdom, her foresight, preserved on that digital file, would be the ultimate authority in the room. She would be the silent, unseen judge in the trial of her own son. On Friday morning, I dressed in a dark, conservative suit. I felt like I was preparing for battle. I met Mr. Finch at his office a half-hour early. He was the picture of calm, a seasoned general on the eve of a campaign he knew he would win. "Remember, Anthony," he said as we stood looking out the conference room window at the city below. "Let him talk. Give him all the rope he needs. The truth has a weight to it, and when it drops, we want him to be standing right underneath it." I nodded, my heart pounding a steady, determined rhythm. I was not the same man who had sobbed on the phone 3 days ago. That man was gone, shattered by the betrayal. In his place was someone else, someone colder and more resolved. I was no longer just my mother's caregiver. I was her defender. I was the architect of her security, and I was about to expose the rot in the foundation of our family. Julian was walking into a meeting to discuss a takeover. He had no idea he was actually walking into a tribunal. The conference room at Mr. Finch's firm was designed to project power. A long, polished mahogany table reflected the recessed lighting from the ceiling. Leather chairs stood like silent sentinels. On the far wall, a large screen, currently dark, was the only modern touch in the otherwise traditional room. Mr. Finch sat at the head of the table, his posture impeccable. I sat to his right, my binder of financial records closed in front of me. The air was still and heavy with anticipation. Julian arrived at precisely 9 o'clock. He strode in with the unearned confidence of a man who believes the world owes him a victory. He was wearing an expensive suit, a little too flashy for the setting, and a wide, predatory smile. He was a shark who thought he'd been invited to a feast. "Alistair, good to see you," he said, shaking Mr. Finch's hand with excessive familiarity. "Anthony, I'm glad we're doing this, it's for the best." He took a seat opposite me, placing his sleek briefcase on the table with a soft thud. He looked at me with an expression of patronizing sympathy, the kind a predator might give its cornered prey. Mr. Finch began the proceedings without pleasantries. "Thank you for coming, Julian. We are here to discuss a matter of extreme gravity. As you know, an anonymous report was made to Adult Protective Services alleging financial abuse concerning your mother, Catherine. The report named Anthony as the perpetrator." Julian nodded slowly, his face a mask of solemn concern. "It's deeply troubling," he said, shaking his head. "I was horrified when I heard. I'm sure it's all a misunderstanding, but these things have to be taken seriously. Mom's welfare is the most important thing. Anthony, I know you've been under a lot of stress. It's easy to get overwhelmed, for things to get muddled." He was already building his narrative, painting me as incompetent at best, criminal at worst. Mr. Finch and I exchanged a brief, almost imperceptible glance. The rope was being played out. "I'm glad you feel that way, Julian," I said, my voice even and cold. "Because I, too, believe our mother's welfare is the most important thing, and I have a question for you. Who do you think would make such a detailed, malicious, and entirely false report?" Julian held my gaze, his own eyes unflinching. "I have no idea. Perhaps a caregiver with a grudge, it's hard to say, but the fact that it was made means we need to install a more robust, professional system for managing her assets. As a financial expert, I feel it's my duty to step in and provide that oversight." There it was, the pitch, the grab for control. He leaned forward, ready to close the deal. Before we discuss new systems, Mr. Finch interjected smoothly, we must address the current one, and the foundation upon which it was built. Julian, what is your understanding of your mother's mental state over the past 5 years? Julian scoffed lightly. She's 80. She has good days and bad days. Her memory is unreliable. It's why this kind of oversight is so crucial. She could be easily confused, easily influenced. He had just walked directly onto the X Mr. Finch had marked on the floor. That's a very interesting assessment, I said, my voice dropping. Because our mother had a different one, she worried that a day like this might come. A day when her wishes might be questioned or her character defamed. A day when one of her sons might let greed cloud his judgment. Julian's smile tightened at the edges. What are you talking about? I'm talking about foresight, Julian, I said. Mom was a historian. She knew that the best way to understand the future is to study the past. And she knew you, so she left us a message, a final projection of the truth. Mr. Finch picked up a small remote and aimed it at the dark screen on the wall. Your mother prepared a statement 5 years ago, Julian. We think it's important you see it. He pressed a button, the screen flickered to life. The first image was the date timestamped. Then our mother's face filled the screen, clear and sharp. Julian's jaw went slack. He stared at the screen, his confident posture dissolving in real time. Her voice, strong and unwavering, filled the silent room. She stated her name, her purpose, and her sound mind. Julian's face went from confused to shocked. He watched, utterly transfixed, as the woman he had just described as unreliable and confused laid out the legal and emotional framework of her decision with devastating precision. When she began to explain why she had chosen me, Julian flinched as if struck. But when she got to him, it was a total collapse. I have deliberately not chosen my elder son, Julian, her voice echoed in the room. His financial history is one of impulsivity. He has, on several occasions, pressured me for loans. I fear that his ambition could lead him to make decisions with my assets that are not in my best interest. As our mother's recorded voice detailed his recklessness and his untrustworthy nature, all the color drained from Julian's face. The charming salesman was gone, replaced by a pale, cornered boy being scolded by his mother. He sank back into his chair, his eyes wide with horror. He was not just being contradicted, he was being exposed, his character dissected by the one person whose approval he craved and whose money he coveted. The video ended. The screen went black, plunging the room back into a heavy silence. Julian didn't move. He just stared at the blank screen as if he could still see her image there. Mr. Finch spoke, his voice quiet but carrying the force of a final judgment. That video, along with Anthony's impeccable financial records, constitutes our response to any investigation. However, we would prefer to avoid distressing Catherine. Julian, you have filed a false report with a state agency, an act of slander and attempted fraud. You have two options. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Option 1, you will pick up your phone right now and call Ms. Coombs at Adult Protective Services. You will confess that you made the report based on a terrible misunderstanding and retract it completely and unconditionally. You will then cease all contact regarding your mother's finances. Forever. Option 2, you do nothing. In which case, at 10 a.m., I will not only send this video to Ms. Coombs, but I will also forward it to the district attorney's office with a recommendation to pursue criminal charges against you for filing a false report and attempted financial elder abuse. The choice is yours. Checkmate. Julian stared at the table, his breathing shallow. The bravado, the charm, the arrogance, all of it had been stripped away, leaving only the raw, ugly core of his greed and shame. He was utterly and completely defeated. Without a word, he slowly reached into his suit pocket, his movements stiff and robotic, and pulled out his phone. The phone call was the most pathetic and humiliating spectacle I have ever witnessed. Julian, the master of the confident sales pitch, could barely string a coherent sentence together. He dialed the number for APS, his hand shaking so much he had to try twice. When Ms. Coombs answered, he stammered through a pre-written script that Mr. Finch slid across the table to him. Yes, my name is Julian Miller, he mumbled, his eyes fixed on the polished wood grain of the table. I am the one who made the anonymous report about my mother, Catherine Miller. I am calling to retract it. There has been a terrible misunderstanding. I was misinformed. My brother's management is exemplary. I apologize for wasting your time. He listened for a moment, nodding dumbly, and then hung up. The silence that followed was absolute. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at Mr. Finch. He just stared into the middle distance, a man whose world had been comprehensively dismantled in under 20 minutes. "You will receive a letter confirming the case is closed within a week," Mr. Finch said coolly. "We are finished here." Julian stood up slowly, like an old man. He didn't even bother to take his briefcase. He walked out of the conference room without a single word, a ghost leaving the scene of his own execution. The door clicked shut behind him, and I finally let out the breath I felt like I'd been holding for 3 days. It was over. Mr. Finch placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You did well, Anthony. You honored your mother's trust." The relief was immense, but it was not joyous. There was no sense of triumphant victory, only a profound and deep-seated sadness. I had won, but I had lost my brother. The person I grew up with, the boy who had taught me how to throw a baseball, was gone. In his place was a stranger driven by a greed so corrosive it had led him to attempt to destroy my life and dishonor our mother. In the weeks that followed, the official letter from APS arrived, confirming the case was closed due to the retraction of the complaint. Life began to return to a semblance of normality, but the emotional fault lines remained. Julian disappeared from our lives. He didn't call, he didn't text. It was as if he had ceased to exist. I knew for my own peace of mind and for my mother's safety that this was for the best. The trust was not just broken, it had been incinerated. There was no rebuilding from these ashes. I wrestled with whether to tell my mother what had happened. In the end, I chose not to. What purpose would it serve? It would only cause her immeasurable pain to know the true depths of her eldest son's betrayal. My duty as her power of attorney was not just to manage her finances, but to protect her peace. She had already fought this battle 5 years ago in that office. She didn't need to know the war had actually come. Instead, I focused on her. I spent more time with her, not as a manager of her affairs, but simply as her son. We talked for hours, about her childhood, about the books she loved, about the history she had dedicated her life to studying. In those quiet moments, I felt the true weight of the responsibility she had given me. It wasn't about the money or the legal authority. It was about preserving her dignity, her comfort, and her happiness in the twilight of her life. One afternoon, as we were looking through an old photo album, she paused on a picture of Julian and me as children, grinning gap-toothed at the camera. She traced a frail finger over Julian's face. "He was always so impatient," she said softly, a wistful look in her eyes. "Always in a hurry to get to the next thing." She looked up at me. "Thank you, Anthony, for being patient, for being the steady one." She didn't know everything, but she knew what mattered. She knew she was safe. The quiet arrangement she had made all those years ago had been her final, most important lesson. She had taught me that a solid foundation isn't just about strong materials, it's about anticipating the stresses that will one day test it. Julian had brought a storm, but the structure she and I had built together had held firm. The family I knew was fractured beyond repair, but a new one, smaller and quieter, had been reinforced. And on that solid foundation of trust and truth, I would continue to build, ensuring my mother's final years were exactly as she had wanted them: peaceful, secure, and filled with love.